Hi all. A very good morning on behalf of Dominic DeMello, who's part of the campus recruitment team at Persistent. A warm welcome to all of you for being part of this session today. Uh, we have had a couple of sessions in the past, and I think each session has been very interesting, and it has given a lot of insights into the technology front. We are here today on behalf of the initiative that we have started, the Persistent Engagement for Enhanced Partnership. We also call it as PEEP. It's a career Recropedia initiative under the campus program. Uh, I would like to take this ahead by introducing today our guest speaker, uh, Mr. Animesh Singh, uh, and a session that is very dear to him because he spent a lot of time in this particular domain, and he's having a wide level of experience in terms of the domain, the technology. So welcome to the TechFliss webinar session 7. The, the topic for today is software-led transformation in banking, financial services, and insurance. Uh, a small introduction to Animesh in terms of his profile. Animesh Singh is the global delivery head for banking and financial services and insurance, having a footprint in North America, Europe, and APAC as a company Persistent has. As a business unit, they work right from identifying the right bets for Persistent in the market to delivering the cutting edge business solutions to our clients, bringing the best in class from people, processes, and a strong partnership in ecosystem. Apart from this, Animesh has been a very curious uh, person in terms of the surroundings in the industry and as to see as to what is evolving in the market and how we as individuals are responding and how businesses we are responding to the new challenges that are coming up. I believe this topic is very relevant for all of us, considering the new times that we have come across in COVID, where everything is online. Things have shrunk in terms of meeting individuals, and I think Animesh would be the best person to take you ahead. So, Animesh, from here onwards, before we get into the session, we have something very interesting in terms of certain poll questions that would be coming up for the audience. And we would like each one of you to be glued up to the poll questions. Uh, Select your options, and it's no yes. There is no right and a wrong answer. It's just that we want to see your engagement level in terms of the session where you can participate very actively. So, Animesh, a warm welcome from the entire team at Persistent, and hand it over to you to take it ahead for today's session.
Thanks a lot, Dominic, and good morning to everyone who has joined the session today. We at Persistent have a motto of see above and rise beyond. And in today's session, when we will talk about the banking, financial services, and insurance as a business, we will be catching up on what's happening in the market, how the industry is shaping up, how some of the technology trends are trending in the market, what we are doing in this space, and most importantly, what is in it for you to be able to do in this industry, in this tech sector. And at the end of the session, we will be opening it up for the question and answers, where if you have any questions, you can post it in the question and answer section, and we will prioritize and take it up ahead. In between also, we will be sending the polls, as Dominic mentioned, a few questions for you to be attentive and to look at those options. And you would be surprised at some of the answers that you yourself will be providing. So without further ado, I will just share my screen and we will start talking about what this really means to all of us. Dominic, can you see the screen?
Yeah, I'm able to see the screen.
Thank you. So I think, this topic, as Dominic said, is very close to not only my heart, but the people at Persistent. And we have a strong presence in the BFSI segment, and it is the largest vertical that we have here at Persistent. So this basically consists of 4 key important ingredients. One is the software, which I think is a no-brainer. All of you would have understood it very well. The second piece is transformation, and we will focus a bit on what we perceive as transformation. And third and the most important element is BFSI, which is in short form of banking, financial services, and insurance, right? So how do we have the transformation defined in context of banking, financial services, and insurance is what we are going to talk about. So, Sudeep, can you bring the first question on the poll?
Yeah, Animesh, just I'm just posting it.
So while Sudeep is bringing the poll up, the idea was to, understand the gravity of the word transformation, because there are a lot of words in industry today which are used very loosely, and different people have different meaning and understanding in the context of the word. And some
Yeah.
of these words are, digital revolution, transformation, um, what we call as an integrated market ecosystem. And we want to make sure that it is important in the context of the presentation that you understand the meaning of transformation. So Sudeep, is the question on?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see it.
Yeah, I'm making, sharing my screen. Can you see my screen, Animesh?
Not yet, Sudeep. Okay, I can see it now.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, this is an individual question to all of you. And as I said, everyone's reality is different than everybody else. So in your personal opinion, which of the following four statements does not qualify for the definition for transformation? The first statement is, you can open a bank account sitting right at the home today with a zero paperwork. Just go back 15 years and just try to imagine it. Second is, we have a company, and this is a public news, Accenture. They're a big name in IT and consulting. They paid $100 million just for their brand logo redesign. So what you see the logo of Accenture today, Accenture paid for it $100 million. Third is commercial value of Tesla cars, and I'm sure all of you are aware of Tesla and Elon Musk. They actually appreciate over time, which is very different to what we have for the traditional cars who are depreciating in the value. And the last question is, you are today able to buy and sell things without even you stepping out of your home and going to a physical outlet. So which one of them actually does not qualify for the definition of transformation? We would like to see. So you will have around 30 seconds to respond to it. And after you have finished the poll, we will see the response on the screen as well.
So Animesh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Dominic.
So Animesh, till the time when people are polling in for the
Okay.
question, so what I wanted to understand is in the COVID times, there a kind of increase in terms of flow of the business when it comes to IT in the banking sector? A lot of things that have happened according to you.
So that's a very interesting question, Dominic. And it's not only about the COVID, but if you also look back at the history of the global economy, whenever there has been a chaos, which means not a planned event that has happened, it has given people the opportunity as well as the risk. And this time also, when COVID as a pandemic happened, a lot of people saw it as a threat, but there are a certain section of people and businesses who have seen this as an opportunity and utilized and thrived on that opportunity. So the business has not gone down. The nature of the business has changed. The priorities of the industries have changed. Just to give an example, there a lot of focus from the banking and insurance industry before the COVID was to see how can they focus on the business growth and try to make in on more customers as well as on the revenue. I think post-COVID, the focus has been largely on how do you build a resilience in the system in such a way that events like COVID do not impact your business. Because if your business is not digital, if your business is not something which can survive these events, then it's not about doing an incremental upgrade to your business, but it's about completely collapsing. So how do you build that resilience? How do you build that sustenance in the times of the COVID? Has, as I said, given more opportunities to companies like Persistent in order to come up with solutions that can safeguard the customers from this kind of digital disruption.
That's great. So it seems that the industry is evolving and evolving very fast towards the change in the digital world.
That has been the mantra.
Great. So thanks to people like you who have been the pioneers in getting this up and running and having people hooked up into getting acquainted with technology and being into the digital space. So I think we have a good amount of people who have polled in. Yeah. Animesh, you can take it ahead for me.
Okay. So, if we just look at the percentage split out there, we have around 60% of the people are saying Accenture paying $100 million does not qualify for the transformation. And I do agree with it. And the reason why it does not qualify for the transformation, will become clear when we talk about how we see the transformation. So let me go back to the presentation that, we were all looking at. Dominic, you can still see my screen, right?
You can share your screen now, Animesh. I will just link to that.
Reshare the screen.
You currently have shared the screen. You will have to share the screen so that I can make it live.
Yeah.
Is it visible now?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Yeah.
So, this is a true sense of transformation if you look at it, right? When a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. Now, if you look at this is a 3 stages of transformation. And if you look at each of these stages, the first green one, the middle one, and the last, the butterfly, using all your 5 senses, you cannot recognize that the third shape is actually originated from the first shape. So transformation is something where you apply certain basic principles and change the very fundamental nature of what it was and what it is. And that to us is a transformation. So look at the first example that we talked about. 10-15 years back, if you had to open a savings bank account, you have to take a leave from the office at least for half a day. And you have to go fill multiple forms, provide multiple proof for identity, for residence, your financial statements in order for you to open the bank account. And after you have spent the half a day at the bank, it would take anywhere between 5 to 7 days for the bank to come back and confirm you that your account has been opened. If you're lucky enough that you have provided all the documents and everything was in order, and then you will be allocated an account number. Today, and that is the green part of the transformation that we are talking about. Today, if you look at, a lot of banks have come with a complete digital way of opening a bank account, which means that right there sitting at your home, using the camera and the audio of your mobile phone, you can open a banking account right there and then, and it hardly takes 10 minutes. And as soon as you are done, your bank account is opened. And you can transact with the bank without having ever a need to go to the bank. And there are a lot of banks today, not only the new ones or what we call them as the neo banks. There are a lot of existing banks who are offering this as a service in India as well. where they are completely branchless, which means that these banks do not have any physical presence in the geography, and still they are able to do the banking with the people. Now, this is what in a true sense is called transformation, and it is one of the relevant examples in the context of what we are going to talk today, which is about software transformation in banking, financial services, and insurance business, right? So if you look at, and this transformation is all around you, you just have to see and think about it. So for example, today there was a time when we had a floppy disk of 1.44 MB, and we were all struggling to see how much and how less should we be storing on that device. Today, if you look at just Google alone, provides you so much space completely free. And if you notice, Google also gives a promise when you subscribe for a Gmail as a service that it is going to be free today, it is going to be free tomorrow, it is going to be free forever. It's a very bold statement to make in the current set of the economy, right? That to us is a transformation. Look at how do you spend your money today. I mean, we have seen in the past when we have taken autos, we have taken taxis, how much time we have spent in just going and finding out change so that we are able to pay for the taxi guy, because the bill will be 115 rupees and you will be having a cash of 150 rupees. Today, people are doing digital transactions even as small as 5 rupees and 10 rupees. You just have to bring your phone up, scan, swipe, and the transaction is done. There is immense amount of technology that goes behind the back to make that happen. But this is just the outcome that you are aware of, right? And even in the niche areas, and I will give you a more recent example of how we have applied it in the banking scenario. When you do banking, there is this enormous amount of documentation that gets submitted to the bank in order to prove that the transaction, the account is actually legal. And behind the desk, there are thousands and thousands of people of what we call as today BPO and KPO services are actually going through those physical documentation, and all they are ensuring is the information that you provided in the form that you submitted and the information that you have provided in the supporting documents are matching and they remain the same. Today, the extent of technology has gone so far that almost 85 to 90% of that information is today digitally processed, which means that there is no human intervention that is there to do this. Just imagine the amount of time and effort it saves, not only for the banks, but also for your customers, right? And this driver, for the transformation is not alone for banking, financial services industry. If you look at the smart city initiative for Pune and many other cities, if you look at the auto industry of how the software is now getting embedded, when you look at MG Rover today, it says internet everywhere. If you look at the banks, we already talked about, if you look at the hospitality segment, everywhere this transformation is happening around you. And there is only one common element behind all this transformation, and that is your software. So the software word itself has become so potent and powerful that it is driving the transformation across not one industry, but multiple industries, right? Almost everything today, you would be able to transform it just using the software. So if you look at, and Gartner is a big name when it comes to the analyst market. And if you look at Gartner actually did a study way back in 2017, 2018, and they plotted the event from the very beginning of World War II till now and tried to understand on the scale of magnitude that which of these events actually shaped that era. So on the right hand side, if you see, these are your all historical disruptions like World War II, your industrial revolution, when the IBM mainframe came, when the personal computer came. And on the left hand side, if you see the magnitude, you will see there are 5 stages of magnitude. One is what you enhance. Enhance means that you have something today, you are building something incrementally on top of that. That is just say enhance. The second word is extend. So you are not only enhancing it, but you are extending and lending it to the next level. Just to give an example today, the technology was to build the drone. But how do you use drone in the retail industry in order for you to make deliveries to your consumers? That is an extension of the technology. The third potent, and this is what we are going to talk today, is about the transformation. So today, for example, when you are buying an item on Amazon, and this is a household name now in India, when you buy an item on Amazon, and if you have a problem, there is an assistant that is provided. You talk to them, and half of the time you may not even realize that the first 15 to 20 minutes of conversation that you are having with the individual, thinking that there is actually an individual behind the line, is actually not an individual. It is an autonomous bot which is helping you answer your generic question, but it is intelligent enough to know when it has to transfer the conversation to an actual human, because the learning of the bot is not to that level. But just imagine today it is able to make a 30-40 second conversation with you. And as it learns and learns and learns, it can make that conversation last longer. And maybe tomorrow at some point of time, you may not need an actual person even sitting there doing the conversation with you. Reinvent is something which basically gives you, a complete change in the way you look at things. So smartphones, if you look at, before the smartphones were there, I mean, it is very hard to imagine sitting today what that life would have been if you did not have the smartphones, right? This is about completely reinventing yourself. And this is like the Edison bulb. It's very difficult to imagine what the life was before there is an electricity, before there was a light, right? And fifth is basically the revolutionize. This is one thing which changes the entire direction of how the world is moving. So if you look at industrial revolution, and if you look at World War II, if you look at beginning of internet, they have actually completely revolutionized the entire industry. And this is important for you to understand, because when you do things even in your day-to-day life, and it's not only for technology or banking and financial sector, you have to actually think that, are you really enhancing your, for example, are you really enhancing your skills? Are you extending your skills? Are you really transforming your skills? Is it reinventing, or is it something revolutionized? So this scale is important for all of us to understand and see where do we fit things in the scheme of overall transformation. So if you have now understand the transformation piece well, we will be moving up to the next segment, which is about how do we see the BFSI industry today? What are the trends that are shaping up what we are trying to do in banking, financial sector, and insurance? And it is not about persistent, it is about how the overall global economy, global market, global industry is trending up. So I will, Sudeep, if you can bring the second question poll at this point of time, and I will keep talking about the trends. Meanwhile, people can respond to the poll that Sudeep is bringing up on the screen. Sudeep?
Yeah.
So while the poll is coming up, let me take up the next step, and that will help you to understand what is the scale that we are talking about, right? Now, today, if you look at just the, banking, financial services, and insurance is a massive sector. If you look at the global banks alone, and if you just look at their IT budget, which is hardly around 10% of their overall budget, we are talking about a volume of $300 billion. This is the market that we operate in today. This is the size of the market that we have. And some of the events that if you look at, for example, Google, if you look at, for example, Amazon, when we look at these companies, we look at them like a tech giants, right? We know them for their technology. But if you look at their spends, almost 50% of their 1.35 trillion business that they do is actually coming from the financial services, right? And it actually makes you think, what is the real business of these companies? So many of you would have noticed in India, few months back, Amazon launched a service called Amazon Pay Later. And it was a very convenient payment method where people today are using cash on delivery or you are paying using debit card or credit card. It's just another lending form if you think of it, right? Where you are actually paying for your items that you're buying and taking a loan from Amazon. And at the end of 30-day period, you are actually paying it back. And if you have noticed, and any of you, if you would have subscribed to that, you will notice that the entire process was completely digital. You would probably not have even realized that you have completed a whole process of what you call as loan from a company like Amazon sitting here in India, and you are able to use that credit line to buy the groceries or tech stuff from Amazon. So this is how swiftly the business gets generated. And this is how what you call or classify as financial services business. Even if you look on the banking and the security side, the growth rate, if you look at the industry growth rate that you will look at from 2019 till what we are projecting for 2023, this is a 5%, 4% growth is an industry leading growth if it comes to a sector. Projecting this kind of a growth for an industry for 5 years is not an easy job, but the kind of momentum that this industry has is amazing. Even if you look at just the Bank Nifty alone in India, if you follow the markets, Bank Nifty is one of the strongest indexes that you will have today on the NSE segment, right? So do we have the poll available? Sweep, are you able to hear me? Dominic, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Okay. So while you bring up the poll, and Dominic, let me know when the poll is up. Let me quickly move forward to you. And this is one of the questions that Dominic initially asked about, that what has changed in the pandemic situation that we have today, right? And these are some of the statistical things. Sorry, Dominic.
Yeah, we have the poll.
I'm not able to see the poll yet.
That poll question answer we want to see.
Sorry, Sudeep, you're not audible.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen to view the answers of those poll questions.
Sure.
Second poll question.
Sure.
Can you see now?
It's loading up. Okay. So I think as we are moving along the session, the accuracy of the answers are getting better. So, this is something that is, unbelievable. We all know that Bitcoin as a currency is still a virtual currency, and the adoption of this currency in the economy is not really there. For example, in India, RBI still does not allow Bitcoin to be treated as a formal currency, but it is very it is worldwide traded. It has its own exchanges. It has its own market. And one Bitcoin is more than 5,000 US dollars in exchange value. More than 5,000 US dollars, right? And this is about a currency that is not even 2 or 3 years old. I mean, in the realistic world, if you look at Kuwait dinar, probably would be the highest with the exchange value of 1.38 USD. But just compare 1.38 USD to $5,000 worth of USD exchange rate, right? And this is, as I said, it's mined completely digitally on the internet, and it is a complete virtual currency. And this is all driven just by software. There's absolutely nothing that goes behind mining this. It's all driven by software, right? So coming back to the presentation, and Sudeep, let me know if people can see my screen. Otherwise, I can reshare it.
Yeah, you can reshare it.
Okay. So
yes,
we were talking about the pandemic. So 82% people are very concerned about going to the bank, which is very obvious. 73% of the people are today actually doing remote work. 63% are more inclined not to even use a web app. They are more comfortable using an app on the mobile as compared to web app. And 56%, for all valid reasons because of the recession in the market, are actually worried that whether they will be able to repay the loans. And these are the sentiments of the consumer that the industry is also watching for. Companies like us are also watching for. So the entire solution or the push that you will see in the last 12 to 15 months that have happened in the industry and the changes that have happened in the industry is to make sure that we are able to address these concerns globally, right? So here is what it drives to, right? And we will spend some time on this particular topic about which are the trends which are actually, shaping the industry landscape. So in the bottom, if you see the main technologies that are driving the trends today, first is your artificial intelligence and machine learning, because this is all today about data. The company which has most of the data that is available from the market, they are able to rule the market today. Companies like Google, companies like Facebook, the reason why they are able to grow so much is because they have so much of data that they have collected on consumer, on industry, on corporates, that they can drive fascinated insights on what is going to happen next. The second big technology that is driving this transformation is the cloud. And cloud conversation were happening in bits and pockets before the pandemic. And while each of the customers were talking about we should be leveraging cloud, we should be going to the cloud, but the transformation or the journey to the cloud was very slow. If there is one thing that has accelerated that journey is the COVID, because every industry realized that if their entire technology infrastructure is not available on the cloud, then they are very susceptible to any such disruption that might happen even today or in the future that can lead their business to go complete silent. Third technology, which is picking the momentum, it was in the proof of concept stages like 4 or 5 years back, but it has now come mainstream, is the blockchain. And the reason blockchain has become one of the key tenets of BFSI as a segment specifically is because there are a lot of players, if you look in the market today, who are playing a role of a broker, right? You want to buy a house, you have to go to a broker. If you want to buy a loan, there are brokers who are available. The blockchain as a technology is basically bringing the consumer and the lender or the banks directly connected onto a single network. And it's not only about B2C, but even the businesses are now getting connected on the blockchain. So if you look at today, there are companies or fintech companies which are created on the blockchain, and the entire investment in these companies is coming from large banks, because they also understand that the real essence of getting the maximum output from initiative like this is to collaborate, and blockchain is an excellent platform on which the banks, banks to insurance companies, banks to fintech providers, bank to consumers, they can actually collaborate, right? And the last word in this is basically the quantum computing, and which is nothing but the amount of information that you can process and how swiftly and quickly that you can process, right? Because speed has become of essence. So these are the main technology trends, if I may call it, which are driving the trends. Obviously, there are many other technologies which are very crucial to the work that is being done in this sector, but these are the four prima facie primary key drivers that have changed the direction and as what we call as transform the way we are doing the work in BFSI space. If you look at what the people are looking at or what the market is looking at, the one of the top agenda on the people is the omni experience agent. So today, if you go to a bank, the way bank operates is they will offer you a portfolio of products. They will offer you a current account. They will offer you a secured lending. They will offer you unsecured lending, saving account. The banks are now changing the whole nomenclature. Today, the nomenclature is, if you say that I want to get married and I want a loan and I want to utilize it over a period of 6 months, this is the use case that the bank has to solve. And this is what you will see when you will interact with the bank. Now, behind the scene, bank has to open a lending account, or bank has to open a current account, or bank has to open a saving accounts to manage this particular experience is completely hidden from the customer. So which means that we are moving more from a product specific nomenclature to a customer specific nomenclature. So that entire focus on how do you create that experience for your customers that are able to retain them, that are able to bring you the new customer, has been the focus. And 40%, if you look at of all the transactions, and this is a data by IDC, which is another analyst firm, are actually digitally pre-staged even before you reach to the branch, right? Conversational banking, which we talked about, the bots, actually has grown up by 22%. The other important thing has coming up is banking as a service, which means that you don't have to be a bank to provide banking as a service. And there are a lot of examples today in the market. We talked about Amazon, who were not primarily a bank, but they're providing banking as a services. There are a lot of fintech companies who have built the entire infrastructure of software and hardware, which can facilitate banking, which means that if I am a person who is acquiring a banking license, today I can go into the market and I can buy an entire banking IT technology asset, and I can be get going in 3 to 6 months. And we as a company also have an offering in the space where we can enable anyone in 3 to 6 months completely up and running on a full bank, a full retail bank, right? And 230 billion is what is forecasted from a market perspective of what it can generate from banking as a service. Personalization, we already talked about. This is about how much personalization an individual can get from a bank. And there are companies in the market, and some of them are our proud customers, for whom if you are taking a credit card from a bank, that service is so personalized that even the UI that you see on the screen when you do the credit card transactions or when you look at your statement, the UI itself is customized for each and every customer. Each and every customer. So there is no generic UI that you will see for all the customers. So that level of hyper personalization is what everybody is running after. New payment ecosystem, even in India, if you look at NPCI has brought in, it's completely mind-boggling the way you are able to use the payment ecosystem today, not only for B2C, but also for B2B, is very difficult to imagine. And a lot of players like MasterCard and Visa are coming up with new payment ecosystems that is going to make it even more transformative. So moving to this, and this is where talking about, and this is a famous statement that came from Bill Gates, which is about banking is essential and banks are not. And I don't know how many of you are able to see, but this is actually a web page of a bank. And if you notice on the top, you see the logo of the bank, which is actually a Wells Fargo bank, right? This entire web page is the landing page of Wells Fargo. And this was supposed to have all the services and products that the bank was offering to its customer. And what we have done is we have overlaid the fintech companies, the financial technology companies who have actually started making inroads into those products and services. And if you look at just for a single traditional bank like Wells Fargo, the amount of fintech ecosystem that have come into play, it has completely hijacked the services which are being provided by a traditional bank, right? So fundamental is the banking is essential, but the banks are not. And this is something that the banks are realizing today. And hence, if you look at the technology spending of the banks, and even for that matter, insurance, that has increased multiple fold on the technology to make sure that they are able to stay in the competition with respect to these fintech companies. And one thing we have to all remember is there is always going to be the specialist provider, right? Even in the technology sector, there is a level of people who all are able to provide the generic skills, but there are always who we call masters in their own individual fields. So there are always going to be, so when this industry is transforming, there are always going to be these specialist providers who will specialize in a particular aspect of financial services, be it loans, be it payments, be it mortgages, right? But at the middle level, when we see at the middle level, we are actually going to see something like this, which is like a superstore market. And today, if you go to, even in India, if you go to websites like Bank Bazaar and all, you will see that this is how the industry is shaping up. You go to one place, you will be able to buy mortgages, you will be able to buy loans, you will be able to open accounts, and you can choose it from any bank you want. And that is what we are now calling in BFSI as superstore concept, right? So if you look at on your left hand side, these are how the traditional banks were. And this is on the right hand side is what we are going towards more of the digital bank. And in between is what you have is what we call as software driven continuous transformation. And this entire change, which is very hard to believe actually, but the entire change is actually driven on the ground by software, where you have traditional banking systems, which are more like a branch based system, very tightly controlled from a regulatory framework, very labor intensive. And now you are going and moving towards a hyper personalization, a digital first, completely cloud, do banking from anywhere kind of thing. And the only thing that is making that shift is the software that run behind the back. So if you look at the future outlook, and we talked about briefly earlier, what we are looking at from a future perspective, and this is what you should be looking from a future perspective, is the self-driving finance. And this is completely driven by one of the core elements that we talked about is artificial intelligence, right? So which means that the finance is not driven by the banks. The finance is actually driven by your need. It's more than a demand than a supply. Your back office. So if you traditionally talk about banks, they have three fundamental elements. If you don't know, in the front, you have what we call as front office, then we have middle office, and then we have back office. So front office is which actually sells. The middle office is basically which arranges and combines the system together to be able to provide this information for the front office to sell. And back office is where most of the labor intensive, technology intensive work is happening in terms of storing, reconciling, and things like that. Today, if you look at the amount of data that you have in back office of a bank or an insurance company today, we are able to generate insights that is actually driving your sales and marketing strategy sitting in the front office. So your back office is actually becoming more and more front office today. Customer loyalty, we talked about, every bank is fighting for it. We also talked about blockchain. Now, blockchain was a true example of how we collectively solve a problem, which is a problem for everybody. So if you also look at, for example, open banking API, and you would have heard this term many a times, right now is reading the market. The fundamental driver for that is every bank is going to provide you an open set of banking APIs, which any third party can consume and provide services to the consumer, which means that every bank becomes at the same level. In one way, if you look at it, they lose their competitive edge, but in other way, they are look at as they are making a uniform market field for everyone to operate, right? You are also making uneasy data alliances. So for example, we talked about banks and how fintech are basically, hovering them and taking over majority of the products and services. But today, if you look at some of these large banks, and we will see the example likes of JP Morgan and Citi, they're investing heavily into fintechs. And the reason they are investing heavily in the fintechs is if they don't embrace that technology, if they don't embrace that change, as I said earlier, banking is going to be there, but the banks are not going to be there. So while the alliances are not holy, that is the need of the hour for the banks to make. While all this is happening digitally, what is also changing is on the regulator side of the things, where the regulators have to be more powerful in terms of controlling how the industry is shaping up, right? And if you look at when we look at the next generation banking, these are the 7 pillars that we are going to focus on. What we do inside the country, what is the definition of a nationalism versus globalism. So these are the themes. And if you look at your focus topics, how do you do the imbalance? How do you do a zero sum? How do you do a resource nationalism? So these are basically the micro and macro factors and the themes and the focus that is driving the banks. And the entire spend, as we may call it, from the back office, core office, and the front office perspective, almost 40 to 50% of your spend is actually going to becoming a digital spend, right? So who has the potential to become like the biggest financial institute? And we talked about this name. If you look at Amazon, and this is an official news way back in 2018, we are studying up in 2021 that they are going to become the America's biggest mortgage lender, right? And they are being looked upon as tech giants. So this is what is going to bring up us to the third topic, and third poll. So Sudeep, if you can bring up the third poll on the screen, we can just capture the responses and we can move forward. Sudeep?
Yeah, Animesh, I'm just put.
And you have many such examples, right? So every new bank, if you look at, they are coming up with a unique idea in order to capture the markets. And Happy Money just is an example of a company. And if you can Google it, you will find they are trying to marry the money and the psychology. And the psychology is, for example, I'll give you an example. So if you, let's say, if you today pay bills and the bill is of 117 rupees, all Happy Money does is it asks you to pay 120. And that, if you notice, that's not a big change. You were anyway supposed to pay 117, you are paying 120, but the 3 rupees that you're paying to Happy Money is actually, Happy Money is opening an investment for you, right? So it's about how do you create a saving out of something that was a liability for you, is how you marry the psychology and the money. So people are coming with different ideas about how they can, address some of the core concerns of the individuals and the customers, and they are making money out of it. A very similar example, if you see on the bank side, Wells Fargo, we talked about one of the banks. They have come up with a launch of an app called Greenhouse, and this is a complete digital initiative from the Wells Fargo where you will have an uninterrupted access to opening an account without a manual intervention. And on top of it, they're actually paying you $150 basically to bring you as a customer. So this is how the banks are responding to the threats that we are giving from the fintechs, right? And we talked about this. If you look at the amount of fintechs that the Goldman Sachs and Citi are sponsoring, that is mind-boggling. And this investment is actually going to grow multiple fold over the next 4 to 5 years. Sudeep, let me know when you have the poll responses ready.
Yeah, sure.
And there is a negative side to this as well, right? And the negative side is there is so much which is happening digitally that there's a lot of scope of frauds, and banks have to pay hefty penalties. And some of the banks are known for this. So Deutsche Bank, if you look at, for example, or one of the bank at some point of time would have gone under this. There are hefty penalties that you have to pay if things go wrong at the end of the bank, because of so much of digital interaction that we are having with the bank, with less and less manual and human intervention, right? So there's also a negative side to this whole digital transformation. So which makes that for every positive use case that you are solving, you have to be ready for 99 negative use cases that might happen wrong, for which you have to be prepared from technology perspective, right? And this is actually watched by the regulators, where regulators are also trying to make sure that they are also leveraging the technology on their side to make sure that they're able to control the market, they're able to control the fraud, they're able to control the wrongdoings, right? So do we have the poll responses ready, Sudeep?
Yes, I'm just sharing my screen.
Sure.
Is it visible, Animesh?
Not yet to me. Okay, so the question was, in top 10 ranking by market capitalization, majority of the companies belong to. Can you zoom it a bit? I can't see the answer. Okay, so I suspected that that given this is a banking and financial sector talk, people will be tend to do that. But you would be surprised to know that in the top 10, there are 5 companies by market capitalization who are all tech companies, not the banks. And market capitalization means how much valuation, what is the valuation of your company? And these 5 companies are Alphabet, which is Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple. So these are the companies who are in the top 10 by market capitalization, right? So if we go back to the deck now, and let me share it again for all of you. So, now the question and the last part of it is, where do you see yourself as part of this transformation, right? Purely from a readiness perspective. So just a quote from Steve, Steve Jobs was that the reason why the software is so important is because it teaches you how to think, and the real learning is in this curiosity and the thinking. So if you want to be ready for this transformation, people have to understand that there are two things you have to be very careful about. There is something which is called fundamentals. Those fundamentals are absolute must, and they were must 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and they are going to be must even for next 10 years. And these fundamentals are something that you have to focus on, right? So you have to pick up any programming languages that makes you think rationally and structure your thought process. That's what a programming language is all about. You have to focus on understanding the data structures. There are a lot of relational, non-relational, and data has advanced, but the fundamental concept of data structures have always remained the same. Algorithms are core to everything you do, from AI/ML all the way to full stack programming that you do, right? So these are some of the must fundamentals that you need to have your hands and control on. And the more important thing is, every time you learn something, you should be ready to unlearn and relearn, because no technology in the market, if you see the trends, they have been able to stay in the market for more than 2 to 3 years. So if you want to keep working in this technology space, you have to make sure that you're able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And there are some things which are more than skill, right? It's all about the making it the complete package. So having the behavioral skills and ability to make a complete personality in terms of your attitude, in terms of your problem solving abilities, in ability to have the curiosity and ask the right questions is equally important, because skill can only give you the capability to do things, but it's actually the will that makes things happen. And in context of BFSI, if you are interested, there are many courses which are again offered by online shops today, like Udemy and Coursera. And one that I personally recommend is done in Bradstreet, mostly because of the certification and everything. And they have been in the market for a long. They have a very potent courses on the fundamentals of the banking, and also what is recently coming new into the banking and financial services sector, right? So this is all about, how do you look at your career? So first 10 years, it's all about learning and networking. Next 10 years, how do you build a brand for yourself? Next 10 years, you have to get ready for your retirement. Building your corner office, and then the plan for retirement. So this is the cycle, as we what we call is a 40-year cycle. This is all the span that you have for the career, and this is how you build it. And I will just end it at the note that, I have always been a very fan of, it's not about who's the strongest. It's always about who is most adaptive to change. And this entire transformation that you see in the industry is all about how the market and the industry is responding to the change that is being brought to them. So it's, when you look at the skill, and we talked about this, the most important skill in the 21st century, which is going to be, how do you learning new skills with agility? And I'll stop it. Sudeep, if we can poll the last question, and then we can get into question and answers if any we have on the call.
Sure, I'm posting in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
So thanks, Animesh. That was an interesting insight into the BFSI domain. And I think you have touched base on all the important aspects, right from the technology, the transformation that has happened, the need of the digital space in the BFSI domain, how it's going to benefit individuals, businesses, and the kind of skill sets that a person needs to have in order to cope with this particular sector, because it's one of the most evolving sectors in the industry currently. So thanks a lot for an amazing session. And so I myself can give proof for this transformation, because just 2 years back, I was one of those individuals who would go to a bank 20 minutes before it opens, and to ensure that I'm the first in the line, pick up a form and fill up an NFT or a RTGS form, and then submit for a fund transfer, and do a lot of other banking activities that I would do. But now I've been a lot onto my phone, and I do maximum of my stuff on the digital side. So it saves a lot of time. It has made me more acquainted with the system, and has built a lot of trust in me in terms of using the technology.
That's right, Dominic.
So we have a couple of
can I share
questions.
the responses if you want?
Yes,
Yeah,
Sudip, we
we
can
can
have
have
the
the response.
Yeah, sure. Let me know if you can see.
Okay, so we had this question about which non-IT industry. Obviously, the IT industry will have the highest spend on their IT budget because that's what their core business is. But to the industries whose core business is not IT, who is spending most on the IT budget? And again, this time most of you have got right. So average spend on an IT budget in the industry is around 8.2%. But if you look at banking and financial services sector, it has been on an average spending more than 10% on their IT budget. So this is also tells you something that who are the industry sectors, who are betting and billing more on the technology, because that is the all what means is where you spend the money, and why you spend the money is because you expect the return to come out of that investment for you, right? So as you can see, while each of these industries are adopting to the technology change, banking and financial sector is one which is betting heavily on this technology transformation. So if we, Sudeep, if we have time, we can pick up some of the questions that I see on posted, unpublished.
Right.
Sure, we can.
So I think there is an interesting question that I see there, which says, will cash-based banking still exist, or will banking completely become digital if banks do not exist, but banking exists? See, if you look at it, look at the cash as just a mean for you to pay. It's just a means of the demand and the supply, right? As long as there are people who are there to receive cash, there has to be people ready with having the cash. That's as simple as that. Changing from the banking, branch-based banking to digital banking has actually nothing to do with cash, because even if you see today, you can pay for an order on Amazon and you can do already a cash on delivery. The payment aspect is only one aspect of how do you pay for the value that you are receiving, and that can be in form of cash, that can be in form of check, that can be in form of a digital payment. That's just a means and the token of how you make the payment, and that's why we call them instruments, right? So cash is always going to be there. It's just that the number of transactions which are happening purely from convenience perspective, because the other party is ready to receive a digital currency, this party is willing to pay in digital currency, and that is the idea with which the governments are enforcing this to make it more and more a digital transaction, because it is not only convenient, but it is also very easy to track and enforce rules and regulations on. Everything that gets on cash, it becomes very difficult to track the transaction, right? So that's hope that answers your question. The other question we can pick it up is, what do you think will insurance agent is going to operate after 5 years or not? So insurance agent, if you look at, again, the fundamental question is, what is the role of an agent? The agent role is actually to come and sell you the policy and also ensure you that how it is in the right interest of you to buy a certain policy, right? It is your personal comfort. Today, if you look at, and you can ask this question to yourself, today, if you have to take a loan of, let's say 50 lakh, which is, let's say 20 times maybe the annual salary that you are making, will you rely on a conversational bot to sanction you that 50 lakhs loan? Or would you prefer talking to an individual who can make that transaction happen? So also when you look at something, when it comes to the amount and when it comes to risk, the perception towards what means and methodology you use is changes. If you want to spend a $10, it's okay to do a digital transaction. But if you want to take a loan of 50 lakh, you really want to sit with somebody in a closed room, discuss it out and make sure that you are making the right decision and you are not, taking a risk by taking this kind of a loan. So the same way, if you look at an insurance agents are going to operate all the while long, because you need somebody to sell you that insurance policy. But what is your need? How much risk are you taking? And how much technology can take cover of that insurance agent? The work of that insurance agent is what the technology is enabling. So today, you will not believe, we have an offering also in the market as a company where we are enabling a package for the insurance agent to go to you, which is hyper personalized for you. So it brings the consumer data for last 20 years or 15 years. Let's say if you're a 35-year guy, based on your banking transactions, based on how you spend, and it creates a very specific profile based on which your insurance product is also customized and being sold to you. So that is where the technology is coming and doing the play, but not actually in replacing the insurance agent. A lot of companies have now the ways and means of going and buying the policies online, but will it ever, diminish the role of an insurance agent? That's not going to happen, at least not in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think Dominic and Sanket, we are end of the session today.
Yeah. So Animesh, few things that had come up as questions from the audience when they registered. So few layman kind of questions, but maybe very pertinent to the topic. So, for example, you see the Bitcoin thing and the way it's trading in the exchange. So, do you see in future if the digitalization of the banking sector happens, where the asset reduces? Basically, when I say the asset reducing, I mean the physical banking not there. Do you see that benefit going to the customer where the interest rates increase, or the benefits of a person earning more by investing can also increase? Because today a bank like SBI, if we have to take an example, has n number of lakhs of branches across the country. So that itself adds into a lot of asset, a lot of investments. But today, if they move entirely into the digital space and that asset is decentralized and it is removed, so do you see the banking sector again giving back that benefit to the customer?
And it is not something to speculate on, Dominic, and I think that's a very good question. In fact, there are banks who are actually doing it. So if you look at DBS Singapore, which launched their operations in India 2 years back, right, they are the ones who are they are the ones who are offering the industry leading savings interest rate on their products. So they offer anywhere between 7 to 8% of interest rate, which is market leading interest rate to their consumers who are opening savings account with them. And the reason why they are able to offer that kind of an interest rate is because they are completely branchless. So all this investment that goes into building a physical bank, hiring people who are running these banks, getting these operational systems in place, they don't have to spend all that. So a part of that profit is what is going back to the customer in form of the interest rate they're charging. If you look at also on the loan side, there are a lot of these credit unions and the fintechs who have come and facilitate the loans at much lower interest rate and for a much lower duration, because the entire process is in digital and they don't have to maintain the capital infrastructure. So this is not only benefiting the bank. So it's like this: if you make 10 rupees profit more, the 5 rupees goes back to the consumer and 5 rupees goes back into the pocket of the bank, which makes both of them very happy.
Right. So, Animesh, though we have just shot up in terms of the time, few questions that we'll take and we'll end the session. So, in terms of the market share, in terms of penetration of Indian companies in the BFSI domain, where do you see our space in terms of companies? I do understand we all on the global level, we competing with the best in the industry. So, but if you have to do a market share in terms of percentage, how do we fare as companies from the Indian side who are on competing with the global chains, whether it is Google and others, though they are very big, but then I think a lot of the work is also handled by us.
So if you look at from a global market perspective, right, and as you rightly said, the boundaries have become much and much thinner today, right, because everybody can operate everywhere else.
Right.
If you look at a lot of these companies and if you look at the overall investment perspective, the developed countries like US, Europe, UK and all, they have already made a lot of advances, but the people who are consuming this is far less as compared to the developing nations like India and China. So the way the growth is actually projected for next 5 years, if you look at from a growth rate perspective, the growth rate in developing nations like India, China and Africa is much higher as compared to the growth rate that is being expected in developed nations, right? And that's why if you look at most of these technologies companies, even the giants like Google and Amazon, they are very heavily focused on developing nations like India. Apple opened their operations in India last year, right? So because they understand that the real value of the money is going to come from the consumer, and wherever you have the largest consumer base is where the business is going to come from. As far as the Indian tech giants are concerned, if you look at the overall marketplace of IT, all the big names that you talked about, most of them they operate here from the India, right? Like of Infosys, right of TCS, Wipro. I think if you look at the overall global landscape for all the companies which are operating from their own geos, India is one of the largest player that is operating in that market. And even for tech giants like Apple and Google, a lot of work today is actually happening from India in places like Hyderabad, Bangalore, and these are giant campuses where people from India are actually part of their growth story.
A very curious question. So do you see RBI getting into Bitcoin very soon? The one who's rejecting it also being one of the partners in getting into the game.
I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the future, but I think at some point of time there would be some acceptance, because currency is what something that as long as me and you are happy to recognize the value of the currency, we can trade in that currency. And I think if as more and more people will start adopting the currency, that is what will start forcing the regulators to recognize that officially, because longer you keep that unregulated, the bigger the problem is going to be, let's say 5 years down the line and 10 years down the line, because when you facilitate something, it is easier to control and put the norms on. And just to give an example, if in UK, if you go, the betting is legal. And because the betting is legal, you can put taxes, you can put everything in place in order to make sure that it is structured and it is not harming the economy. But places like India and all, where the betting is not legal and it still happens, it's not that it's not happen. It's very difficult to control that. So if we want to have a control environment for this to flourish, I think maybe not now, but at some point of time, I see some acceptance coming for virtual currencies like Bitcoin.
That makes me feel a little confident because I've invested a little bit of it. So Animesh, one last question, and before we end this session. So you'll see our maximum audience today is the students, basically the budding engineers who would be joining the industry very soon. So how much important it is for an individual who gets into a particular domain when he starts working to think in the same line. For example, if I want to develop an app or a product in the BFSI domain, how much do I need to know about the sector and be a banker himself and think as a banker before I get into delivering something as a service to the customer?
So I think, a simple question, if you see, if you have to open, and let's take an example, if you have to open a tea stall, right? It's a very simple example. What are the things that you should consider when you're trying to open a tea stall? First thing is you have to understand is where should you open a tea stall in terms of where the consumption will be highest, right? So if you go to a large IT company like Infosys or Cognizant, and if you open a tea shop there, obviously your customers are going to be much higher as compared to anywhere else when you open the tea shop, right? The second thing that you have to look at it is, what is the competition that you have? Because you are not the only one who is thinking in those directions. So if, for example, if you go in front of Persistent, you will get one tea stall. If you go in front of Cognizant, you will find 10 tea stalls, right? So then the next question comes is, how do you differentiate yourself in terms of the offering that you have with respect to the competition, right? Because you may be having exposure to 1,000 customers, but not even 10 will come to you if your products and offerings are not differentiated to them, right? And the third and the most important thing is what you have to offer from your own offering perspective, right? So are you offering just a plain vanilla tea, or you are looking at the summer and you are also started offering buttermilk, or you are also offering black tea without sugar, knowing that a lot of these senior people in the industry today have diabetic and they are becoming more health conscious. So how do you basically do your product and offering that actually suits that market? So even if the budding engineers today who are looking to make a mark in the market, I think for them it is important to understand is where the market is heading, where the most scope is, and that is where we talked about the BFSI having the highest spending on the IT and the technology set. Then you understand what you have a capability. Not everybody is built at the same level. Not everybody has the same gift. Not everybody has the same talent. Where does your talent lies? Where does your strength lies? And build on that strength, right? And the third and the last thing is keep observing who your competitions are and making sure that you have something to offer which rest of your competition doesn't have.
So that's how you back the business, because you keep your eyes open as to what is happening, because every customer that you come across is looking at something different, better than, so a DBS is looking at something better than Citibank as an offering in terms of services. So when you go into bag your business or understand the customer needs, I think you have to be well ahead of times in terms of the business, the knowledge in terms of technology, and then bring back a customer to you.
Yes, absolutely right, Dominic. Well said.
So great, Animesh. I think I would have to give you this title of Mr. Cool, because that's how I associate you in Persistent. Pretty cool in terms of your movement in the organization, moving from the top floor to the down floor, to meeting your customers, interacting with students during a campus placement drive. So it's amazing, and I feel that today I get out of this session with much more knowledge in terms of the BFSI domain, because it's always been a word to me. So the four words that come into that. But today I see a lot of knowledge, and I believe each member who's been part of the session today would benefit a lot. So thanks a lot for the time that you spared, and an amazing presentation, an insight into the BFSI domain. And I see Persistent is rocking in the BFSI domain, and a lot of those credit goes to you and your team. So before I end it, thanks to the audience, basically in terms of the time that they have given us on the being part of this session. It's not that easy with COVID times. You have to kind of you need to move from one particular aspect to the other. So a big thank you for all. You can also follow us on the various platforms like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and the other platforms. Post in your feedback, and we look forward for many more sessions coming ahead. I believe each session has enhanced your knowledge, and also the knowledge of what Persistent does as an organization. And since you would be looking at Persistent as one of your companies to kickstart your career, this is a good platform where we interact, we share knowledge, and we move ahead as partners. So thanks a lot, Animesh. Thanks a lot to the audience for being part of this. On behalf of the campus recruitment team, a big thank you for the entire team, Sudeep and all who have helped us with getting this session up and running. Thank you, and
Thank
have
you,
a
team.
great day.
Thank you, team. And I hope all of you had a great time, and I had the same. So enjoy the day, rest of the day and the rest of the weekend.
Amazing listening to you. Thanks a lot, Animesh.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a great weekend.
Bye all.
Bye.